Hi, I'm Sarah Andrew, a PhD student at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and my advisor is Dr. Garreth Tigwell. I'm presenting our paper, Accessible Design is Mediated by Job Support Structures and Knowledge Gained Through Design Career Pathways. I want to start this talk by defining a couple of terms. We use the word digital designer for simplicity in our talk to collectively refer to both designers and developers contributing to the creation of digital services like apps, games, software, and websites. Accessible design is an inclusive design practice where the needs of people with disabilities are considered. For example, consider these images. The one on the right has higher contrast than the one on the left. The higher contrast provides a more accessible interface for people with low vision. Accessible design is also beneficial for people experiencing situational and temporary impairments. All in all, accessible design benefits everybody. Therefore, designers should be making their work accessible. However, prior work has emphasized that design is still accessible for many reasons. Please see our paper for a thorough review. To summarize, reasons fall under these general categories. Designers can often hold negative attitudes towards accessibility, and they feel it limits their ability to make appealing aesthetic designs. Another reason for inaccessible design is that sometimes client projects have tight deadlines. Accessibility education is essential, but in general, accessibility is often not given enough focus in design and technical courses, meaning professionals lack sufficient knowledge of accessibility. Adding accessibility as a core part of a degree would help, but this requires faculty with knowledge of accessibility, which is often lacking. For example, Leite et al. Ran a large-scale survey of Brazilian mobile developers and found less than half had some knowledge on implementing accessibility. Even familiarity with accessibility guidelines does not guarantee confidence in creating accessible design. Accessibility guidelines, such as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines (WCAG), are often criticized for not being easy to understand. Accessibility practitioners promote the creation of accessible products in large companies, although this is often led by only a few workers. What we don't know is how accessibility advocacy and knowledge is shared in smaller companies or even when designers are self-employed. So as we highlighted, there are often many factors for inaccessible design, but we wanted to investigate this further while acknowledging a changing design landscape. It's important to stress that modern digital design is something many people can now engage with due to widespread consumer design tools and lower technology costs, which is great, but it presents a new challenge where there is likely a large variability in knowledge on accessible design. Furthermore, design team sizes can easily vary. On one end of the scale, you might have a single person who is a self-employed web designer or someone exploring digital app design as a hobby and who, is publishing their apps for people to use. On the other end of the scale, you might have a designer who is a part of a large team within a global company. Moreover, with this new growth in design careers and improved technology means designers can live and work in more remote rural locations. With this in mind, we are interested in answering the following research questions. How does access to different levels of resources influence accessible design? What needs and challenges should be considered to effectively support digital designers working in those different contexts? For our methods, we conducted interviews with 20 digital designers who were located across 6 countries. Designers had different work styles, working in company or organization, hobbyists, self-employed, student, and occasional designers. Our participants worked in urban areas, example cities and town, and rural areas, example villages, as well as working from home and remote, example from a coffee shop. We recruited various designers to portray the bigger picture because we understand that not all designers come from design backgrounds and that they haven't been working in different contexts. The last column on the table shows an estimate of how often they implemented accessibility into their designs. We ran 3 pilot tests to refine a semi-structured interview process. During our interviews, our questions focus on the understanding of accessibility, the challenges and successes with implementing accessibility, and the testing their designs with disabled people. We analyzed our interviews using Brown and Clark steps for thematic analysis to create a thematic map. Our analysis identified several themes and sub-themes. In this talk, I share some insights, but please read our paper for more details. Workplace support structures affect designers' implementation of accessibility. Not all designers come from large companies with adequate resources. Designers can be freelance, hobbyists, or small company designers. In large companies, there are continuous opportunities to learn from one another, but this is more difficult when you're not a part of a team. Participant 13 from a rural area in USA said, "But sometimes I do get stuck. I'm the only experienced designer on the team, and So sometimes I feel like I wish I had another person that I can talk to get ideas and feed off of one another. Other challenges we found relate to infrastructure such as less reliable internet in rural area, but please read our paper for more insights. Unique design career pathways affect awareness and understanding of accessible design. Not all designers today come from traditional design backgrounds, which means they may take online courses for training, and those courses do not cover accessible design. For example, participant 1 from Urban India said, "So I'm a self-taught graphic designer, but if I enrolled myself in a school or university for learning, I expect accessible design to be taught." Interestingly, there was an expectation that higher education would cover accessible design. But from prior work, we know accessibility is not widely taught. We need to ensure that all avenues of design education engage with accessible design, whether it's a short online tutorial or a college course. There are hesitations and challenges in connecting with disabled people. Sometimes designers do not know how they can get in contact with disabled people to collect feedback on their designs, but other times they do not have the resources to do this. Participant 18 from Urban USA said, "But unfortunately, I don't have, the means of trialing my projects on a larger basis with people with disabilities." For designers who work remotely or live in rural locations, it can be even more challenging to collaborate with disabled people, which could be the most effective method for implementing accessible design. We have recommendations that cover the following: effort being directed towards supporting designers working in different geographical settings, establishing procedures to guide digital designers who want to connect with disabled people for accessibility evaluations, larger companies continuing to lead the field by exploring more opportunities to support freelance and self-employed digital designers with access to accessibility advocates and training materials, embedding accessibility support in all types of design tools and alternative education resources. For the time, we'll only highlight a few details of one of our recommendations, so please read our paper for more details. Though the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines (WCAG) has its limitations in understandability, with some refinement, it can be made helpful to designers in rural or low-resource settings who cannot easily access disabled participants for feedback. It could also be useful to build on current guidelines by providing pre-made templates for the most frequent accessibility issues and advice for testing when working with limited resources. This would also help minimize setup issues when digital designers have limited accessibility knowledge. Design and development tools could also do more to guide accessible design, since unlike variations in job support structures and educational background, design tools is something all designers have in common. Thank you.